Welcome to Heart of the Craft. I'm Ray Zate. I used to be a news photographer. Now I am the owner and managing partner of Storyville Road. With over 2 decades of experience, I've had the pleasure of meeting countless talented individuals who pour their hearts and souls into their craft. In each episode, I sit down with a unique guest to explore their personal why, the driving force behind their dedication to their craft. Through these meaningful conversations, I hope to uncover the insights and stories that fuel their creativity and commitment. Join me on this journey as we celebrate the beauty of storytelling and the heart that goes into making each frame a work of art. Welcome to Heart of the Craft. In this episode of Heart of the Craft, I sit down with Brett Akagi. He is a renowned photojournalist who has worked in news, working at stations like KARE-TV, where they won Station of the Year 4 times. 3 of those times in a row, they pulled off the three-peat. We talk about a lot of things, his passion for storytelling, a backstory of his family, but first and foremost, I ask him, how'd you get started in the business?
It's kind of funny. So in college, I was on 2 different tracks. You know, I really didn't know that I wanted to get in television news until maybe my sophomore year. I was going to Dodge City Community College, and we did like some video stuff. And it was like, this is kind of fun. So then I go to Fort Hays State University and get involved in the print side, public relations side, and then also the TV news side. And I really found that TV news, like that, was like my drug of choice. I jumped into it from there. I worked in Great Bend, Kansas, making commercials for 3 months. Then I went to WIBW in Topeka, where I was a news photographer. That really, once I got there, it's like, yeah, this is really what I want to do. This is what I want to do when I grow up, right? And then I went to Kansas City, and really through that process of working there, I really found my groove through the National Press Photographers Association. I started going to the conventions, national conventions, because it's like, I've got to meet these people. I've got to see what's going on. And there it was like, oh my God. It was like, and it's not like church, but it was like going to church. I found my visual storytelling religion by going to these conventions. And then I started to compete. Luckily, I had some skill, and just I worked my ass off. And I ended up being the Region 7 Photographer of the Year 4 years in a row. And at that time, no one had done that before. And then I got on the radar of KARE-TV. So I started there, and I was a GA photographer for a year, and also started doing sports. So I was the number 2 Vikings photographer for home games. And about a year later, the director of photography position came open, and I applied for it. You know, and I like think of this, like, this dude's an outsider. He's only been here a year. There are people who've been there a lot longer, knew the culture, had done some things, and I was chosen as director of photography. Like, that was scary and amazing at the same time. Going from Kansas City to Minneapolis to KARE-TV, the legendary KARE-TV, is like it's like going from college to the pros.
For those that don't know, tell us about the legend of KARE-TV.
Well, you walk in there, and they've already had 1, 2, 3 Photographer of the Years for NPPA. And basically that's like the MVP of the NFL, right? Like that's how crazy, good they were. And they also had 2 Station of the Year. So NPPA Station of the Year awards. And that also meant that's like winning the Super Bowl. Okay. And so I'm the director of photography, and I'm leading the staff. But my thing is, I'm never going to be the most talented person in the room. I'm never going to be the most skilled person in the room, but I will be the hardest worker. Really, my mom and dad and my family taught me how to be a leader. You know, it's like, it wasn't official leadership classes, and we were farmers in Southwest Kansas, but it was all about leading by example, by working your ass off, being accountable, and learning from your mistakes, and then stepping up to the plate to be a leader, right? So I had all those intangible things to help me. So we the first year, so I'm director of photography. and we submit our tape for Station of the Year. We're not even a finalist. My news director, he said, we want to win Station of the Year. So that's like if you're on an NFL team and you're the head coach, you've been named the head coach, and your GM goes, oh, by the way, we're going to win the Super Bowl. We want you to win the Super Bowl. That's the kind of pressure that was there. There's, this implied excellence of where we wanted to be. So that first year, again, not a finalist, and I'm like going, God dang it. And so we won the my second year of being director of photography. And then went on during my time there. I was there for about 10 and a half years. We won it 3 times in a row. And I still don't think that no one has matched that. Any other station has matched that. I might be wrong. But again, that's like being a 3-peat Super Bowl champion. You don't know how hard that is. My staff changed from year to year that we won 2, 3, and 4. It changed. I had like my basic people that stayed there, but others had moved on and other people that moved in. So then it's a matter of like, okay, there's this expectation. We got to keep pushing ourselves. When we ran the table and won 3 in a row, that third year that we had won it, I call that real, or SOY win, gritty but not pretty. And that meant like, a lot of people accuse NPPA stations that go after the NPPA Station of the Year of having a pretty tape, right? Everything's beautiful. And it's like, oh, it was like, yeah, it wasn't that. It was not that. It was like GA hard news, feel, and not everything was perfect, but like it told a great story. But that's probably my favorite SOY win, because we were gritty, not pretty. And just, I don't know, there's just something about like going to a street fight and you're getting your ass kicked and the odds are stacked against you, but you still come out a winner, right? That's how I felt.
I chair the documentary division now for NPPA. There's stories that are just absolutely beautiful, right? And it is a photography competition, but the story matters. And how those visuals drive that story matters.
Pretty pictures don't make a great story.
Right.
Right?
Yeah.
I sat in the booth editing a story with JR Mann, still one of my best friends, and he was a photographer on staff. And JR was watching my stuff, and he looked through my raw and watched my final. He goes, dude, I love you, but I want you to know you try to shoot for perfection and perfect every shot, down to the single frame and the audio and everything else. He goes, that's awesome. He goes, but you're not giving me like the real story, because you're so worried about being perfect, right? We talk about the pretty pictures thing. And then once I got past that, it's like, yeah, he's right. He goes, it's okay to have a little shake. It's not about perfection in what you do, right? Everyone wants to be perfect. I get it. But it's those things that like happen in the real world, whether you're gathering a moment, gathering sound, gathering a shot, that it doesn't always have to be perfect with the audio or even the visuals and stuff, as long as like it makes the story great. And that's really, what you and I've talked about, the elevation of a story from here to here, right? What makes you cry? What makes, all those things. And once you get past like, oh, well, he was 2 frames off on this edit and the audio wasn't great because he was overblown. It's like, yeah, but what a great moment, right? It's like you storytellers, and it doesn't matter if it's for news, right? This can be for marketing. It can be for Marcom stuff, anything, right? As long as it elevates the story, that's really what you want, right?
Talk to me a little bit about the power of storytelling.
Al Tompkins always talks about how we've had storytellers ever since caveman days, right? Whether they were painting on the walls or passing down their stories. And you see in the Native American cultures or other indigenous cultures where they're storytellers, they're best storytellers. They had the memory and the stories could weave these great tales of what happened to their culture, to their people, right? And that's like, it's almost, we talk about having it embedded in your DNA. We crave good storytelling, whether it's written, whether someone's telling us, say on the radio or in person, or what we do on video, right? Where we can weave sound and pictures and audio together, right? And that video storytelling, there's just something that like just gets to you. When you combine those characteristics of what you can see and what you can hear, it really affects you here in your heart and your brain, because it engages your brain. And there's something magical about that you and I love, that makes storytelling even better, especially if you've got compelling content, if you've got some compelling visuals to go along with that, and that you can put it all together.
Talk to me about the farm kid. Were there traces of you wanting to be a photographer back then?
Yeah, I mean, there was an old photo, that's probably about 4 or 5, and it was like that toy Instamatic. And there's a picture of me holding it up, taking it, and I had a Kodak disc camera. That was the crappiest format. But when my mom and dad got it for me my senior year in high school, I loved taking photos, and I was always mesmerized. I was a newspaper reader when I was in junior high and high school, and I loved the photos, the cool photos and stuff. So it just had this natural inclination of loving photography, even with my crappy Kodak disc camera. I don't know. There's just something about that visual information that you can gather that helps out. But it's not just about being a photographer, right? I pick up the social aspect of my dad. My dad, we always used to complain whenever we would go out in public because, oh my God, Dad's talking to so-and-so. Dad's talking to a stranger. Why is he talking to the stranger? He doesn't even know this person. He's acting like he's the long-lost friend that he hasn't ever seen in years, right? And while I complained about it, we would watch and learn. Basically, I was learning from my dad about how to be in public, even meeting strangers or even meeting friends, on how to be. That helped me then as a journalist and a visual storyteller in being able to go out and talk to strangers, write for news, man on the street stuff, or you go to a story, you're going to talk to someone about the worst day in their life. So it matters how you communicate with them. And it's not just you talking. You got to listen. You got to pick up on that emotional vibe and then be able to respond or just to be quiet. Now, my kids are the same way that I was when they see me out in public and we're together and I'm talking to strangers and doing the same things, and I can just see the eye rolls from my kids. But they also understand, because I've told them about this. I go, Ji-chan, grandfather in Japanese, I go, Ji-chan used to do this too. And now you guys see me do it, but I go, it's helped me out. And they understand that.
How many generations back, or when did your family come here?
I am third generation Japanese American. I am Sansei. So my grandparents came from Japan. Immigrants coming to the United States, that first generation, they have it really, really hard. And they can come from an esteemed background, but we've interviewed families, immigrant families, where the first generation, oh, I was a doctor, I was an engineer, and what do you do now? I drive a taxi cab. I am a janitor, and so they paved the way then for the second generation, their kids who were born in the United States, to grow up. But the second generation, the Nisei, my mom and dad, their generation, they had it tough because it was during World War II. They can catch racial flack. They can catch flack for, like, you're poor, right? Or you eat funny food and it smells funny. I don't know if I like that or not. And then third generation, by the time we roll around, we stand on their shoulders, and they have paved the way for us and taken a lot of crap and gone through a lot of stuff, a lot more than we've gone through to get to where we're at now. I talked to my boys about this, about the legend of our family and all the stuff that we went through. And we should be proud of the fact that, like, our family were badasses, that they went through all this crap and look where we're at now. And the thing that I used to think that, right? Like, damn, we're an awesome family. But then when I look back at it now, I go, we had a lot of help. We had a lot of help from strangers. We had a lot of help from other family, and we've been supportive of each other. When my dad and his brothers wanted to move to Southwest Kansas to farm, and they're talking to a landowner. The landowner goes, I would love to rent you land, but I don't know if anyone wants to do business with you. I don't know if anyone wants to sell you seed. I don't know if anyone wants to sell you equipment or even repair your equipment. I just don't know. So this guy takes my uncles around the county and starts talking to different businesses. It's like, hey, these are the Akagi brothers from Colorado. They want to live here, and they need to know, will you do business with them, right? So basically, my family had to ask permission to live and work in Grant County, Kansas. Now, luckily, there were people that said, yeah. So my dad got out of the service. He and the three brothers went to Grant County and they started farming. Well, had it not been for that landowner and a couple of other guys, we would have never grown up in Southwest Kansas, So again, I stand on the shoulders of giants with my family, but also with help from other people outside the family. We didn't do it alone. Where I'm at today, I didn't do it alone. I had help from the NPPA and great people there who decided to take a chance on me or who mentored me to get to where I'm at today. And Al Tompkins, he's been a great resource too for me.
Yeah.
As well as the Poynter Institute and the NPPA. But had it not been for them, I'm not where I am today.
That story is, man, that's insane. You have to ask for permission just so I can live in this town and make a living to provide for my family.
So when I was at KARE and I did that story about my family, I included about when there was internment camps during World War II. So for people who don't know about the World War II internment camps, let me give you a little brief history lesson. So after the Japanese bombed Pearl Harbor, you can imagine the hysteria for people who were Japanese, either Japanese nationalists that live in the country, and even people who were born Japanese Americans in the country, and especially on the West Coast. There was a hysteria like you would not believe. If you look at some of the headlines from the newspapers, Jap this, Jap that, it was bad. And so the president and his cabinet said, you know what? We need to move anyone of Japanese descent off the West Coast, and not in the best way. So what that meant was hey, if you're still living on the West Coast by this date, we're going to move you into a camp, right? So they're like, well, what do we do with our businesses, our cars, our homes? So I was like, that's up to you. So they were selling their cars and homes and businesses for pennies on the dollar. Luckily, there were some very few families who looked out for their Japanese American friends and took over the apartment or took over the land until they got back. So then you're supposed to get moved off the coast, the Japanese Americans, and then into these internment camps throughout the Midwest. And my family, actually, we had some family members that ended up in Colorado, near Grenada, Colorado, at Camp Amachi, camp that's surrounded by barbed wire and guard towers with machine guns. Now, they were able to work outside of the camp, but you had to move away from everything that you knew, even if you were an American citizen, give up those rights to be in camp so that they could keep an eye on you, right? And that happened. And then you have to remember the war didn't start out so great for us. Besides Pearl Harbor, we were getting our butts kicked, and then they needed more manpower. So the government went back to the camps and said, hey, if you're of fighting age, we want you to volunteer to join the army. So think about that. We're scared of you and what you could do, so we're going to have you give up everything and go to camp. Oh, by the way, now we need you to fight for us. Okay? So there are two schools of thought. So there were people who said, you've got to be effing kidding me. There is no way. So those people were called, especially for the males, were called the no-no boys. They were moved up, I believe, up into Camp Thule. So any families, anyone that were huge dissenters and would not fight for the government were sent up to Camp Thule. Now, there was another flip side of that. There were Japanese Americans to join the Army, and they came into the 442nd Army Brigade. So there was the 100th out of the Hawaii and the 442nd that made up the rest of the regiment. They combined, and during the war, this battalion accumulated so medals. There's no other battalion in Army history that was awarded more awards and medals than the 442nd that were made up of Japanese Americans. So anyway, I mean, just imagine that. So that was part of the story, not all the details, but talking about like the internment camps. And after the story ran, you know what was amazing, Ray? I got a lot of emails, and a lot of the emails in the Twin Cities, and there were people like going, I didn't know this happened. And I'm a white male, I'm in my 60s or whatever, 70s, and I've never heard of this before. And I'm like going, how have we never heard this before? Like, I mean, we've heard it because it's part of our history.
I think this does go back to storytelling because we're capturing history, right? We're capturing things as they happen. If they're not documented, they can get lost, so it's important. And it's important to reshare those stories. What was your most impactful story?
There are two stories. So one is the story I did with my family, and the other one is about Nick Nelson, the little 9-year-old boy who decided he was going to have his leg amputated. Nick Nelson has a thing called popliteal pterygium syndrome. So he's got these, and it looks strange. It's a web on the back of his legs. And so for some reason, because he's got popliteal pterygium syndrome, that web is not just skin, it's nerves and stuff like that. And the knees, just the bone density is not good. So he had, at least 20 surgeries on both knees. And he could never walk straight, and he was always going to struggle. And they said, if you have the amputation, we do a bilateral. So we'll at the knee, we'll take half the knee so that you have something to put prosthetic on. If we do that, it's going to be easier for you and less pain. So he did surgery one. We did 3 stories on him. He did one knee, and then he did the other, and then he got prosthetics. Throughout that process, when we interviewed him and Greta, his mom, Nick sounds like a 50-year-old man. Like, he was just amazing with what he had gone through and the decision that he had made, and he was ready to do it. And Greta's mom talking about like all the struggles he went through. So one of the parts of the story was doing the mile fun run at school. Well, he can't run, so he's on a trike, a hand trike, right, to move around. And even there, he struggled because the bike's chain would not stay on. You hear the chain come off, and he goes, that sucks. It never felt like life was fair for him, and this was a way for him to get back. And the cool thing is, he had talked about what he wanted to do. He wanted to stand tall. He wanted to play on the monkey bars like the other kids on the ground. He wanted to run around the playground. So he got that. But I remembered that soundbite, and I brought it back visually at the end when, after he has his surgery, he comes out of surgery, and you see his leg is gone. You see the bandages and stuff. When you talk about what his future could be, I ended with a shot of a shadow of the playground that he actually played at. Kids running around. It's a shadow of the monkey bars and kids jumping around on it. So again, just to show like this is the future that they envisioned for Nick. So it was just a nice way to finish off the story, thinking about it visually. That story, it ran in the Twin Cities, and it was seen by hundreds of thousands of people, right? Because of the size of the market. NBC News loved it so much, they said, we want it to run on NBC Nightly News. So we edited it out about 30 seconds, but the rest of it played, and it's a long story. And then the Today Show ran it then the next morning. So it was seen by millions of people. That had so much impact. I mean, it was great. It was very, very good impact. The Nelson family, who we highlighted, Nick Nelson, got a lot of publicity with what they did. And just, Dwight Schrute from The Office was one of his favorite characters from The Office, even did a nice little video hello on the Today Show for him. So it was pretty awesome.
Storytelling, video storytelling. What does the future hold for that, in your opinion? What does that future look like for what we do?
Everyone's hiring a visual journalist, because they understand visual storytelling. You look at what you guys are doing now, which is amazing stuff, but it all translated from being a news photographer or being in TV news, that those skills translate directly into what Storyville does right now, right? All those different things that you've learned. So it's exploded. So I think as a whole, it's been great, and it offers up a lot of job opportunities. But what we really, really need are for people, especially in the Marcom industry, that are hiring us, is that we also get more people with that background to be higher up in the food chain, as far as managers and directors and VPs and stuff, that understand it, so that they can also utilize it the right way. But like, if you've got someone who's only worked in the Marcom industry, marketing communications industry, at a company for a long, long time, that's the only way they think. And they never want to break out of that, right? So we need to help them break out of it. In which, what you have done at Storyville, because I've looked at some of your stuff and people love it. It's like, yeah, isn't that great how you can tell a story and it doesn't have to be the conventional way of what you think, and that comes back to our news roots. It comes back to us taking chances that work, not like crazy chances like, I think I can do this, but if I do it, it might not land well. No, you're taking controlled chances, and like, I know this will work. You just got to let me do it. Visual storytelling is important because it helps connect people. It connects people from their brain to their heart to the message that's going out. Visual and video storytelling is probably one of the best ways to help tell stories. And why is it important that we tell stories? Because people, especially now, have so much going on. Great video storytelling breaks through that clutter, right? Especially if you've got great storytellers doing it. Your photographers, your reporters or producers, the people who present it. When you have all those things that just hit on all cylinders and can knock it out of the park, it drives people to these stories or to be motivated to do something. That is the power of storytelling. And that's what I love. I could talk about Nick Nelson and the story about my family. Really, it was because the content was so strong. The people that were in the story were so compelling that we could tell their story. And then it becomes up to me not to screw it up, capture the visuals, capture the natural sound, capture the meaningful interviews, work with my teammate, and then really capture the imagination of the people. That's why you want to go with video storytelling. If you're a journalist, if you're wondering why, it's like, well, what makes a story better or good or not? It's like, it's the content. So go out there and find those great content stories and go tell the stories. Don't ever let anything stop you from telling a great story. Just find a way around it. It's like my mantra: adapt, overcome, persevere. So no matter what the obstacle is, and you're always going to have obstacles in life, whether it's life or your job or whatever, that you got to push through those and still go reach for excellence. That's what we should all be doing.